That's awful. Why would you do something like this? I told you earlier I don't want to live with you. Leave? You parasite wife living off dad. Parasite? Did you really think that of me? Well, isn't it true? You can only live because dad earns money. You can't even do household chores properly. You're nothing but a parasite. I had no energy to explain the situation to Sarah, who kept saying such horrible things. There was no need to endure and live with someone like this any longer. We can't live together, that's my line. Okay, I'll leave then. After finishing shopping, I went to change into my room clothes in the room mat, and I shared. That's when I saw something shocking. Not a single piece of my belongings was there. From clothes to bags to even a single piece of underwear, nothing at all. What does this mean? Unable to understand the situation, I stood dumbfounded, looking around the room. There were no signs of the room being ransacked, and Matt's belongings were still there. But all of mine was completely gone. Could it not be a thief? I decided to ask Sarah, who was at home during my absence. Thinking this, I knocked on Sarah's door. What do you want? Sarah, looking displeased, peeked a little through the door gap. Sarah, I can't find my belongings. Do you know anything? Only my stuff is missing. Oh, that. I took care of all of it. Sarah smiled slightly, her expression eerily creepy. I am Jenny. I used to work in sales but quit when I got married. I met Matt, who is 8 years younger than me, through a friend. When I was 37, Matt was bright and full of topics, and we hit it off despite meeting for the first time. We started dating a few months into the relationship. Matt approached me with a serious look. Actually, there's something I have to tell you, Jenny. What is it? What's wrong? Actually, I have a daughter. It was completely unexpected. At that time, Matt was 29 years old. When I was 29, I had no romantic encounters and was focused on my work. To think that he already had a child at such an age, while shocked, I managed to ask, Really? How old is your daughter? She just turned 11. What? 11, that means she was born when I was 18. The sudden confession made my head spin. I struggled to take in Matt's words. Matt had a shotgun marriage with his high school girlfriend when he was 18. His ex-wife dropped out of college soon after enrolling, and their life with the daughter began. However, being young and wanting to enjoy life, she left him and their daughter. I'm sorry to bring this up now, but as I started thinking about a future with you, Jenny, I felt I couldn't keep this a secret any longer. Yeah, I'm honestly shocked. I understand, but I want to be with you, Jenny. I want us to be a family. That's why I had to be honest. Honestly, I was shaken by Matt's confession. Here I was, starting a new relationship at this age. Even if I didn't say it out loud, it was true that I had considered marriage. However, I hadn't realized that the person I was considering marrying was divorced and already had a child. If I broke up with Matt now, I might never get married. As I repeated Matt's words in my head, I contemplated this. Jenny, I want to marry you. I know I've suddenly shared a lot, and it might be confusing, but I want you to think about it seriously. Matt looked at me earnestly. I was truly at a crossroads in my life. 7 years after Matt's confession, I was living with Matt and my stepdaughter, Sarah. Sarah, who wanted to become a doctor, had become a freshman in medical school. Matt often boasted about Sarah, his proud daughter. He had always been indulgent towards Sarah, perhaps out of a sense of guilt for her having grown up without a mother, but it was excessive. He bought her whatever she wanted, and Sarah grew up without learning restraint. I tried to instill proper values in her, hoping she would become a decent person. However, it seemed that my parental concern was nothing but a nuisance to her. Sarah hurled horrible insults at me. Don't act so high and mighty just because you're old. At that moment, I felt foolish. I decided to stop doing everything for Sarah. From then on, I resolved to only do the bare minimum. One weekday, as usual, I prepared breakfast for 3 and set the table. Matt began eating as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Sarah took a bite in silence, then ostentatiously sighed. "Jenny, your cooking never improves, does it?" Hearing that, I thought to myself, not this again. Lately, Sarah's complaints about everything I do had become more noticeable. "You should try being forced to eat something this bad every day." Sarah stormed out of the living room with a huff. Matt just continued eating silently. It was as if he wasn't even listening. In such moments, Matt would not stand up for me. I had no allies, yet I didn't feel particularly distressed by the situation. There was no need for me to devote myself to someone who didn't care about me. It wasn't just bravado. I truly believed this. Sarah's lack of common sense was troubling, but there were other issues that distressed me. It was Matt's terrible spending habits. Besides indulging Sarah with whatever she wanted, Matt also loved to buy expensive items, bags, shoes, watches, anything that was considered high-end. When he ran out of money, he would come to me, begging for more. "Jenny, I need you to prepare $500 by tomorrow." Again, this is the second time this month. I've told you to get your financial sense straightened out multiple times. Shut up. This is how I relieve stress. Just get it ready. I don't intend to give you any more money. Money doesn't grow on trees. When I rebuked Matt, he guzzled down a can of beer. Someone like you who stays at home all day couldn't possibly understand the burdens of working outside. That's no way to speak. I have my own difficulties, too. Jobs have days off, but housework doesn't. Neither you nor Sarah help out with the chores. Matt slammed his hand on the table with a loud thud. The sound echoed through the living room. Shut up. A carefree housewife should just listen to her husband. Hurry up and get the money. Loudly berated, I instinctively shrank away as Matt stood up abruptly. An empty beer can throw him towards me, almost hitting my shoulder. Matt tended to become aggressive when something displeased him, especially when he had been drinking. Once, during a similar conversation, he had hit me, and since then, I had decided to avoid contradicting him as much as possible. "All right, I can't manage $500, but I'll prepare what I can, so please stop threatening me like that." "Good, you understand. Don't start opposing me from the beginning." With a snort, Matt opened a new can of beer and began drinking. Why am I still here? I had started to lose sight of the meaning of continuing as a family after being treated this way. One day, following such a life, Sarah came home early from school as her afternoon classes had been canceled. However, we didn't really spend any time together. Sarah stayed in her room and didn't come out. I remembered that the fridge was almost empty since I hadn't gone shopping. If it were just me, I could manage with takeout or store food, but it's different with a family. Feeling it was a hassle. I eventually got up. About an hour later, after shopping, I stuffed the groceries into the fridge and headed to the room I shared with Matt to change into my home clothes. Then, a shocking sight caught my eye. There was not a single piece of my belongings in the room, from clothes to bags, even down to a single piece of underwear. Nothing at all. What does this mean? Unable to understand the situation, I stood dumbfounded, looking around the room. There were no signs of the room being ransacked, and Matt's belongings were still there. But all of mine had been completely removed. It couldn't have been a thief. Could it? I decided to ask Sarah, who had been at home while I was shopping. Knocking on Sarah's door, I asked, "What do you want, Sarah?" Looking displeased, she peeked a little through the door gap. "Sarah, I can't find my belongings." "Do you know anything?" "Only my stuff is missing." "Oh, that. I took care of all of it." Sarah smiled slightly, her expression eerily creepy. "You took care of it? What do you mean?" "I don't want to live with you anymore, so I prepared everything to make it easy for you to move out." "Lightly, are you telling me to leave the house?" "Don't put it that way. It's tiring to live with a stepdaughter you're not related to by blood, right? Think of it as a choice for both of us to be free." I couldn't comprehend Sarah's outrageous behavior, which she claimed was for my sake. Even if her argument held, she had no right to throw away someone else's belongings. There were many important things in my belongings. Where did you throw them? They're out at the back door. I've called the waste collectors, so if they haven't come yet, you might still find them there. In a panic, I rushed out to the back door. Fortunately, the waste collectors hadn't arrived yet, and my belongings were piled up in several trash bags. I retrieved them and visited Sarah again. That's awful. Why would you do something like this? I told you earlier I don't want to live with you. Leave, you parasite wife living off dad. Parasite, did you really think that of me? Well, isn't it true? You can only live because dad earns money. You can't even do household chores properly. You're nothing but a parasite. I had no energy to explain the situation to Sarah, who kept saying such horrible things. There was no need to endure and live with someone like this any longer. We can't live together. That's my line. Sigh. Okay, I'll leave then. Hearing my words, Sarah's face brightened instantly. Yay, honestly, I thought you would make more of a fuss, but I'm glad you accepted it so easily. Serves you right, old lady. I had endured because we were family, but it had finally become ridiculous. Staying with these people was just a waste of time. Fortunately or unfortunately, thanks to Sarah, I was spared the trouble of packing up. I decided to leave the house that very day. After leaving, I received no contact from Matt. Normally, one would expect at least a phone call, but the lack of communication was evidence that Matt had no intention of repairing our relationship. I also did not contact Matt or Sarah. I was savoring the happiness of being able to use my time solely for myself. Since my parents' home was far away and I was not yet divorced, it wasn't realistic to return there with all my belongings. So I rented a short-stay apartment near the nearest station and was living there. About 6 months after leaving, my smartphone alerted me to an incoming call. Sarah's name appeared on the display. I ignored it at first, but she kept calling over and over, so I finally gave in and answered the phone. What do you want? You keep calling. It's annoying. Finally, stop ignoring me. Suddenly, a scream, like a piercing voice, came through. I instinctively pulled the smartphone away from my ear. You don't have to yell, I can hear you. You've never contacted me before, so what do you want now? It's something serious. Today the university told me that my tuition hasn't been paid. They said I can't advance to the next year if it isn't paid by the deadline. Why haven't you handled it? Why don't you ask your dad about that? He's always busy with work during the weekdays, so it's your job to handle such matters. It's your role to take care of the money he gives and make the transfer. It's terrible that you're causing me trouble by not doing what you should. Even in this situation, it seemed Matt hadn't told Sarah the truth. Utterly dismayed, I decided to tell her the truth. Look, the person who was paying your tuition wasn't your dad. Huh? What do you mean? I was the one paying it, but after everything that happened, and since we're not living together anymore, I have no obligation to spend money on you. I don't plan to pay anymore, so just so you know. Hearing my words, Sarah was silent for a while, but then burst out laughing. What a thing to say! As if a housewife like you could afford medical school tuition. You must be making excuses for misusing the money you got from Dad. It's pathetic. You can think what you want. If you really believe Matt is paying your tuition, tell him to make the payment right away. You can make bank transfers online these days, you know. Are you still saying that? You'll just embarrass yourself with such a blatant lie. I wouldn't mind forgiving you if you just admit it now. The audacity to take such a tone when her advancement is at stake is astonishing. It's the epitome of shamelessness. You're free to say what you want, but I'm only telling you the truth. Shameless woman. I'll check with Dad then. Good riddance to a wicked woman like you. After saying her piece, Sarah abruptly hung up the phone. Would Matt tell his daughter the truth? I didn't care what became of those two heartless people, but dealing with them was a hassle. One day, while staring at my computer screen, Sarah called again. It had been about 2 weeks since our last conversation. Dad really hasn't been paying the tuition. Well, of course. I was the one who actually paid. Maybe he wanted to impress his daughter. But you were a housewife. How could you pay for medical school tuition? I'm not just a housewife, I replied. Sarah gasped for a moment. Then in a small voice she muttered, "What? I've told you before I work from home." "That's a lie. I never heard that," Sarah continued. "You just did. Listen, or maybe you thought what I say isn't worth listening to. That's absolutely a lie. You just forgot to say it." As Sarah struggled with her excuses, I continued the conversation. "I'm a programmer. I can work just with a computer, and I used to work at an aita company before we got married. I have plenty of job requests." "Programming? That job requires special knowledge, doesn't it? If you're going to make up something, at least come up with a better lie." "I told you I worked at an aita company. I was in sales, so I had to know some basic knowledge, and I didn't start from nothing. It turns out I'm quite suited for this meticulous input work. I'm actually pretty good at it." "No way. I thought you were just a parasite living off Dad's income." "That's your dad's story. Matt spends all his salary and hardly contributes anything to the living expenses." Sarah's shocked expression was visible. It must be shocking to be confronted with the fact that everything she believed was a lie. "I've been the one paying for your tuition, groceries, utilities, and all other living expenses." "You mean Dad hasn't been putting any money into the house? Then what does he spend his earnings on?" "I don't know what he spends it on. He never tells me, but it's definitely all for himself. Even so, I haven't heard from Matt at all. How are you managing to live?" "How are we managing? It's been the same as before you left. You might want to check on that. If Matt continues spending money the same way, he'll go bankrupt soon, don't you think? You'll lose the luxury of attending university." "No way," Sarah muttered quietly, then hung up the phone. Was it too harsh to have such a conversation with a daughter, even if she is my stepdaughter? I stopped myself from feeling any pity. Sarah is 18. She is an adult. She needs to rethink her way of considering only herself, even if it means hurting others. I turned back to my computer and resumed work. A few days after telling Sarah the truth, Matt called me. It had been over 6 months since I left the house, and this was the first time he had contacted me. "What did you tell Sarah?" "What do you mean, what did I tell her?" "I just told her the truth, that I was the one paying for all our living expenses." "You shouldn't have said that. Now Sarah is calling me a liar. She won't even talk to me properly. It's all your fault." His selfishness left me only able to sigh. "The real issue is your reckless spending. You had me pay all the living expenses, and when you ran out of money for fun, you'd ask me for more." "How can you even say such things?" "Shut up. It's the wife's duty to support her husband who works outside." "Who's being arrogant now? Talk to me about duties when you've contributed even a penny to our living expenses. You have no right to speak when you only spend money on your own entertainment." "Is that all you wanted to say? I'm hanging up now. It's a waste of my time." Wait. His tone suddenly changed to one of panic. "Since you left, I've been struggling because there's no money for living expenses. I'll forgive you if you apologize now, so come back home." I was speechless at his continued arrogance, even in desperation. In the end, he only thought about himself. As I stayed silent, Matt kept talking. "I can't maintain the same lifestyle with my earnings alone. I've taken on debts, but I have no way to pay them back. If you come back, everything will be as it was. You must be lonely on your own, too." "You really have some nerve. You earn a decent salary after all, yet you're still in debt. Are you still wasting money?" "I have my own reasons. I can't just change my spending habits overnight, right? You need to show off to keep the girls at the nightclubs from running away." Matt's reaction was more clueless than I expected, and I almost burst out laughing. It must have been unexpected for him. He thought he had hidden it well. I know about you frequenting nightclubs and how smitten you are with one of the girls there. You've been telling her you'll lavish her with a luxurious life once we're divorced. How? How did you know about that? I have business dealings with your company. One of your colleagues who is in charge told me. There's been gossip about your affairs, and he thought it would be prudent to inform me. Dan it, who spilled that? I got curious, so I hired a detective to investigate. The evidence just kept piling up. Fine dining, buying her designer bags and jewelry. It's no wonder your salary vanishes if you spend like that. Matt fell silent. He probably never thought I would find out, and that it would become a topic of gossip in his workplace. It was sloppy of him. I hear there's also gossip about your previous wife. What do you mean? The reason for your divorce. You told me she left because she wanted to play around, but the rumor is it was due to your infidelity. What? That rumor has spread too. That reaction, should I take it as confirmation that the rumor is true? Well, I don't have proof and I don't know the truth, but I can't trust anything about you anymore. Please, let's get a divorce. Matt kept ranting about not accepting a divorce and wanting me to come back, but he never apologized. Even if he apologized now, there's no way I'd return to that house. But I was thoroughly disappointed with his selfishness. When I mentioned taking it to court if he continued to resist, he finally conceded to the divorce. Now I can truly be free. I felt relieved. I was officially able to divorce Matt. The lawyer I hired was very competent and went out of his way to make sure Matt really felt the consequences as I wanted. Matt's spending and abuse, along with Sarah's harsh words, were all documented, and based on that, I demanded compensation. I requested a lump sum payment to avoid any future dealings, and he paid it all. The lawyer even spoke to the girl Matt was involved with, negotiating not to sue her if she told the truth. Asking her what happened between them, she confessed everything about the years Matt spent lavishly on her that led to Matt being banned from the nightclub, and he could no longer meet the girl he had been supporting so generously. However, his poor financial habits did not improve, and he continued to accumulate debt, which has now reached an unmanageable amount. As for Sarah, Matt couldn't afford her college fees, and she had to drop out of the university she had just entered. She's been trying to find a job to pay off the debts, but due to her pride in wanting to become a doctor, she looks down on many jobs and has been repeatedly rejected. If they had cherished their family, they could have continued to live a stable life, but now it serves them right. As for me, I'm enjoying a life where I can freely spend my time and money on myself. Though I'm not very materialistic, I do enjoy sipping good wine the night before a day off or eating out at nice restaurants. Now I'm planning a solo trip abroad. If I ever find a partner in the future, I hope it will be someone who can cherish each other. Thinking about this, I enjoy my life alone.